Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise to the Creator of heaven and earth. My name is Yisrael of the tribe of Dan, of the nation of Israel. We are going to do this short presentation in the matter of why we are Old Testament based. We're going to, as the saying goes, let the book speak for itself. So let's do so. Isaiah the 53rd chapter, and we're only going to read the first verse. It says the following. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? That's something we want to ask, as asked in the scriptures. Who hath believed our report? In order to get into Isaiah the 53rd chapter, those two questions in verse 1 has to be answered. In order to answer that, you would have to know who is the speaker, who's being spoken to, and who is being spoken about. In order to answer what is our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed. In order to answer the second question, you got to answer the first question. In order to answer the first question, you would have to know who the speaker is, who's being spoken to, and who is being spoken about. Without answering those questions that Isaiah 53 verse 1 asks, any understanding that comes from anyone teaching on Isaiah 53 is not going to be accurate, because you're not answering the question that is being posed even in the scriptures. What happens in many cases when this is discussed is we are asked what or who is the arm of the Lord, when that question is not even asked in the scriptures. So without answering the question that the scriptures itself asks, Israelites who are Old Testament based will ask the question. When we see that happening, I want to state that it is very important to stay line upon line and precept upon precept and stick to the point of what you were talking about in the first place. Don't get sidetracked to try to answer or feel compelled to have to answer another question when the question that the scriptures itself is asking is not addressed. So that's something we want to point out in that particular regard. We want to go from there to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 35. And it says the following. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 35. And it says the following. Unto thee it was showed that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God, there is none else beside him. Unto you, meaning unto you, Israel, it was shown that the Lord, he is God, and besides him there is none else. There is none else beside him. Of all the miraculous things, or the unusual things we may say, such as a woman over 80 years old giving birth, such as people who are living to be over 700 years old, or within the Old Testament, if Jesus was the star of the Old Testament, as some even have stated, then it would have been noted in the Old Testament. What happens is, such as when we read in Isaiah 53, and we stay into the script, ask the same questions that Isaiah 53 asks, usually what happens is one goes then to Isaiah chapter 9 or Daniel chapter 9, Daniel chapter 7, which has nothing to do with the question that Isaiah 53 was asking. So what we have to know and understand is what was shown unto the house of Israel is that the Most High, he is God and there is none else. So we want to just point that out for reason and purposes. Let us go into another part. We want to go to the book of Ezekiel chapter 43, if we will. Ezekiel, the 43rd chapter, And we're going to start in verse 18. And it says the following. And he said unto me, Son of man, thus saith the Lord God, these are the ordinances of the altar in a day when they shall make it, to offer burnt offerings thereon and to sprinkle blood thereon. And thou shalt give it to the priests, the Levites, that be of the seed of Zadok, which approach unto me to minister unto me, saith the Lord God, a young bullock for a sin offering. Ezekiel chapter 45, verse 22. And upon that day shall the prince prepare for himself and for all the people of the land a bullock for a sin offering. In 7 days of the feast he shall prepare a burnt offering to the Lord, 7 bullocks and 7 rams, without blemish, daily the 7 days, and a kid of the goats daily for a sin offering. In, brothers and sisters, Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 18 and 19, in Ezekiel chapter 45, verse 22 to verse 23, we read about what will happen in the future of Israel and regarding sin offering. So the teaching that says that Jesus Christ was sent as a sacrifice to die, or that Jesus Christ's life was a scapegoat for the nation of Israel's sins, that is not accurate. There's a teaching going on in Israel that says Jesus Christ's death was the ultimate sacrifice for the nation of Israel. We've asked several questions concerning this. And if his death was the sacrifice for the nation of Israel's sins, why is it that the Old Testament prophecies, such as Deuteronomy 28, such as Jeremiah chapter 16, still happen to the children of Israel? Why did we go into captivity? Why does Ezekiel 39 give the reason why the Most High sent Israel into captivity? In Ezekiel chapter 40 to Ezekiel chapter 48, prophecies that have not come to pass yet. And when it will come to pass, it speaks about the priests regarding a sin offering and the prince in Israel regarding a sin offering. Brothers and sisters, we have to know that the scriptures was already completed in what you call the so-called Old Testament. They who know that know and understand that what is referred to as the New Testament was put alongside the law and the prophets by the Europeans. This is why we see a distinction between the teaching of Israel, Jeremiah being in Egypt, which is in Africa, prophesying to the Israelites. Ezekiel in Babylon, which is in Western Asia, prophesying to the Israelites. The Israelites on their own accord, in many cases, went to Asian and African places to flee from the Europeans, to flee from the other nations as well. Paul wrote mainly to people that were in European places. When his teaching was rejected in Acts the 13th chapter, he said he and Barabbas will turn to the Gentiles. So we want to point this out for reason and purposes. What is presented then is saying that Paul taught Israelites that was in Gentile lands. We see, and we want to point out, that Jeremiah wrote a letter to Israelites that was in Babylon. In Jeremiah chapter 43 and 44 speaks about Israelites that's in Egypt, which we have already pointed out is in Africa. Israelites in their own accord, in bulk, did not go to European places. So we want to just emphasize this for a reason and purposes, brothers and sisters. The New Testament is not what Israel had when they left in 70 AD. The New Testament is not what Israel had during the Bar Kokhba battle with the Akiba in a matter that happened in 132 to 135 or to 138 AD. The only book, nonetheless, that Israel had when they came out of captivity that they was given from the captivity of Egypt, that the Most High gave them was the Torah. All Israelites go back to the Torah. Isaiah the 34th chapter tells you to seek ye the book of the Lord. If Isaiah is an Old Testament prophet and he's telling you to seek the book of the Lord, he would not have been talking about any new coming book. He would have been only talking about books that was of older than his own. So these are certain things that we want to talk about and bring out for reason and purposes. And as Isaiah stated, fret not they who going to talk against you, because you know that you come in with the word of the Most High in the scriptures. So they're not talking against you, they're talking against Yah. Shalom.